June 14, 1952, 2:47 p.m. Bumpy Johnson sat in the front pew of Abyssinian Baptist Church, staring at his best friend's casket. Jocko Henderson, dead at 46 from 3 bullets to the chest. 8 hitmen from the Genovese family were inside the church right now. 2 disguised as mourners. 6 more outside covering every exit. 500 witnesses. 1 unarmed target. The perfect kill. Bumpy's hands rested calmly on his knees. No weapon. Church rules. Reverend Adam Clayton Powell, Jr. didn't allow guns in God's house, and Bumpy respected that. His men were outside, Willie Jackson, Quick Lewis, Illinois Gordon, all armed, all ready. But inside this sanctuary, Bumpy was alone. The 2 fake mourners sat 4 rows back. Left side. Bumpy had spotted them the moment they walked in. Wrong shoes. Too new, too shiny. Nobody in Harlem wore brand new shoes to a funeral. You wore your good shoes, the ones with scuff marks from years of Sundays. The hit was supposed to happen at the cemetery. During the burial. Chaos, confusion, easy escape. But Bumpy had changed the plan this morning. Private burial, family only. No public graveside service. So now the Genovese had a problem. Kill Bumpy here, in front of 500 people, in Reverend Powell's church, or let him walk out alive. Bumpy took a slow breath. Jocko's widow, Dorothy, sat beside him, crying softly. Her 3 children in the row behind. Bumpy had promised Jocko once, "If anything happens to me, you take care of my family." Now Jocko was in that casket, and Bumpy was going to keep his promise. But first, he had to survive the next 60 minutes. What the Genovese family didn't know, what they'd learn in the next hour, was that Bumpy Johnson didn't need a gun to win a war. He just needed 500 people and a preacher with a microphone. To understand why Bumpy was trapped in that church, you need to understand who he was in 1952. 47 years old, 20 years of running Harlem's numbers racket. The Italian mob had tried to take it from him a dozen times. Dutch Schultz tried in 35, ended up dead in a New Jersey tavern. Lucky Luciano tried in 46, settled for 10%. Vito Genovese tried in 50, got pushed back to the Bronx. By 1952, Bumpy Johnson was untouchable. Not because he was the most violent. He wasn't. Not because he had the most money. The Italians had more. But because Harlem loved him. When Mrs. Jackson couldn't pay rent, Bumpy paid it. When the police tried to shut down black businesses, Bumpy made phone calls that made the harassment stop. When young men came home from Korea with no jobs, Bumpy found them work. He wasn't just a gangster. He was Harlem's protector. And Jocko Henderson had been his right hand for 15 years. Jocko wasn't muscle. He was Bumpy's accountant, his strategist, the man who kept the numbers operation running smooth. No violence, no flash, just intelligence. Bumpy trusted him with everything, the money, the roots, the connections. 3 weeks ago, Jocko had discovered something. The Genovese family was running a parallel numbers operation in East Harlem, skimming players from Bumpy's territory, paying runners more money to switch sides. Jocko had documentation, names, dates, amounts. He was putting together a case to take to the commission, the 5 families' ruling body, to prove Genovese was violating the 1946 agreement. On May 23, 1952, Jocko Henderson was shot 3 times outside his apartment on Edgecombe Avenue. The police called it a robbery. Bumpy knew better. The Genovese family had sent a message, and today, at Jocko's funeral, they were sending another one. Kill Bumpy in front of his entire community. Show Harlem that their protector was mortal. Show them that the Italians could reach anyone, anywhere, even in God's house. But Vito Genovese had made one critical mistake. He assumed Bumpy would come to the funeral armed, would start a shootout, would give them justification. Instead, Bumpy had walked into that church with nothing but his mind. The Abyssinian Baptist Church wasn't just any church. It was Harlem's cathedral. 10,000 members. Reverend Adam Clayton Powell, Jr., the most powerful black minister in America, the man who'd just been elected to Congress. This church was sacred ground, and the Genovese family had just violated it by bringing guns inside. Bumpy had been planning his response from the moment he walked through those doors. He'd seen the two fake mourners, spotted the wrong posture, the telltale bulges under their jackets. He'd seen the 6 men outside, parked in 2 black Cadillacs across the street, engines running. They thought they had him trapped. But Bumpy Johnson had learned something a long time ago. When you can't fight with weapons, you fight with words, with symbols, with faith. And right now, sitting in that front pew, Bumpy was about to turn a funeral into a fortress. Because 500 people were in this church, 500 witnesses, 500 members of Bumpy's community. And when Reverend Powell stood up to deliver the eulogy, Bumpy was going to give him something to preach about. Not violence, not revenge, but protection, unity, the power of Harlem standing together against those who would destroy it. The Genovese family came here to kill a king. Instead, they were about to learn why Bumpy Johnson didn't need a crown. He had something more powerful. He had his people. 2 hours earlier, 12:30 p.m., Bumpy's apartment, 409 Edgecombe Avenue. Bumpy stood in front of his mirror, adjusting his black tie. His wife, Mamie, sat on the bed watching him, worry etched on her face. "You know it's a trap," she said quietly. "I know. Willie says don't go. Quick says don't go. Even Illinois says it's suicide." Bumpy turned to face her. At 47, his hair was graying at the temples, lines deepening around his eyes, but his gaze was still sharp, still calculating. "I can't not go, May. Jocko was family. Jocko's dead. You're alive. Stay that way." He walked over, sat beside her, took her hand. "If I don't show up to my best friend's funeral, every person in Harlem will know why. They'll know I was afraid. And fear is the only thing I can't afford." Mamie squeezed his hand. "Then take a gun. Powell won't allow it. No weapons in the church. Powell won't know. I'll know." Bumpy stood up, put on his suit jacket. Charcoal gray, impeccably tailored. "I gave Powell my word years ago. His church stays clean. I won't break that, not even for this." Downstairs, Willie Jackson was waiting beside the car. 6'3", carrying a shotgun under his long coat. "Boss, we got movement. 2 Cadillacs been circling the church since 11 a.m. Genovese plates." "How many?" 8 that we've counted. Maybe more." Bumpy nodded slowly. "Position our people around the perimeter. Nobody engages unless I give the signal." "And if they hit you inside?" Bumpy's expression didn't change. "Then you make sure my wife gets home safe. The rest, you handle however you want." 1:45 p.m. Outside Abyssinian Baptist Church. The church stood on 138th Street like a fortress. Gothic architecture, tall spires, stained glass windows catching the afternoon sun. 300 people were already inside, more arriving every minute. Bumpy sat in his car, watching. The 2 Genovese Cadillacs were parked across the street. 6 men inside, visible through the windshields, waiting. Quick Lewis leaned in through the window. "They're not even hiding. They want you to know." "That's the point." Bumpy opened the door, stepped out. "They want me to run, or they want me to come out shooting. Either way, they win. So what do? We go to a funeral." Bumpy walked up the church steps, each movement measured, calm. He could feel 8 pairs of eyes on him. The hitmen watching, calculating the angles, the distances, the timing. At the door, Reverend Powell was greeting mourners. 41 years old, tall, commanding presence, wearing his ministerial robes. He saw Bumpy and his expression tightened. "Bumpy." "Reverend," Powell lowered his voice. "There are armed men in my church. I can feel it. I know. I won't have bloodshed in here. This is sacred ground. Bumpy met his eyes. I'm not armed, Reverend. You have my word. Whatever happens in your church, I won't be the one who defiles it. Powell studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Jocko was a good man. He deserves a proper service. Yes, he does. 2:15 p.m. Inside the church. Bumpy walked down the center aisle. Every eye in the building tracked him. The church was filling up fast. 400, 450, 500 people. Workers from the numbers operations, bartenders, shop owners, families Bumpy had helped over the years, and 2 men who didn't belong. They sat on the left side, 4 rows back. Mid-30s, Italian, wearing dark suits that fit too well. New shoes, hands clasped in their laps, but the tension in their shoulders gave them away. These weren't mourners. These were soldiers. Bumpy walked past them without a glance, sat in the front pew beside Dorothy Henderson. She looked up at him with red-rimmed eyes. "Thank you for coming," she whispered. "Jocko was my brother. I wouldn't be anywhere else." The casket sat 10 feet in front of them, closed. Jocko's face had been too damaged by the bullets. Bumpy stared at the polished wood, feeling something cold and hard settle in his chest. Not anger. Anger was wasteful. This was calculation, strategy. The Genovese had killed his friend, and now they wanted to kill him. But they'd made a mistake. They'd chosen the wrong battlefield. 2:35 p.m. The service begins. The choir started singing. "Precious Lord, take my hand." 500 voices joined in, the sound filling the cathedral, shaking the stained glass. Bumpy didn't sing. He watched. The 2 hitmen 4 rows back were nervous. One kept glancing at his watch. The other's right hand kept drifting toward his jacket. His voice grew stronger, more passionate. This was what Adam Clayton Powell, Jr. did best. Preach, command a room, move hearts. But Jocko's death was not natural. It was not an accident. It was murder. The word echoed through the church. And we all know why. Because there are those who want to take what belongs to our community, who want to destroy what we've built, who think they can walk into Harlem and take what's ours. 500 people shifted in their seats. The energy in the room changed. Bumpy sat perfectly still. Powell's voice rose. "But I want to tell you something today. I want to tell you that Harlem is not for sale. This community is not for sale. And the men who think they can intimidate us, who think they can kill our brothers and walk away," he pointed directly at the 2 fake mourners. "They don't understand who we are." The 2 hitmen went rigid. 500 pairs of eyes turned to look at them. The entire church knew now. Everyone saw them. Everyone understood. Powell continued, his voice like thunder. "There are wolves among us today. Wolves who came here not to mourn, but to hunt. But they made one mistake. They forgot that in this house we are protected, not by guns, not by violence, but by faith, by community, by the strength of 500 souls standing together." Bumpy stood up slowly, turned to face the congregation. His voice was quiet, but it carried. "Any man who wants me," Bumpy said calmly, "can come and get me, right now, in front of all these people, in front of God." The 2 hitmen didn't move, couldn't move. 500 people were staring at them. If they drew their weapons now, they'd never make it out alive. Bumpy smiled, not a warm smile, the kind that said, "Checkmate." "That's what I thought." The silence in Abyssinian Baptist Church was absolute. 500 people holding their breath. The 2 Genovese hitmen frozen in their seats, hands hovering near their jackets, faces pale with the sudden realization of what had just happened. They'd been exposed, publicly, in a church full of witnesses. Bumpy turned back to Reverend Powell. "Continue, Reverend. Give Jocko the service he deserves." Powell nodded slowly, understanding exactly what Bumpy had done. He'd turned the funeral into a shield. made every person in this church a witness and a protector. As I was saying, Powell's voice regained its strength. Jocko Henderson believed in community. He believed in protecting what's ours. And today, we honor that belief by standing together. He gestured to the congregation. I want every person in this church to stand up. 500 people rose to their feet. The sound was like thunder. Now, Powell said, I want you to look at the men sitting in row 4. Left side, look at them and remember their faces. Because these men came here with evil intentions. They came to defile this sacred space. They came to harm one of our own. The 2 hitmen were sweating now. One's hand moved toward his jacket. I wouldn't, Bumpy said quietly, still facing forward. The moment you draw that weapon, you're dead. Not from me. From them. The hitman's hand stopped. Bumpy addressed the congregation without raising his voice. These men work for Vito Genovese. They killed Jocko Henderson, and they came here today to kill me. But they made a mistake. They thought Harlem was divided. They thought we were weak. They thought one man with a gun was stronger than 500 people with faith. He turned, met the eyes of the lead hitman. You were wrong. The hitman's jaw clenched. Bumpy! Stand up. The man didn't move. I said stand up. Bumpy's voice was still calm, but something in it made the entire church go colder. Both of you, stand up and walk out of this church. Go back to Vito Genovese and tell him what you saw here today. The 2 men stood slowly, hands visible, away from their weapons. Every eye in the church tracked them. Tell him, Bumpy continued, that Harlem doesn't fear him. Tell him that Jocko Henderson's death won't go unanswered, but the answer won't be what he expects. Tell him that I don't need guns to protect my community. I just need my people. The 2 hitmen started moving toward the aisle. The crowd parted, but barely. Made them squeeze through. Made them feel the pressure of 500 bodies. 500 pairs of eyes. When they reached the door, Bumpy called out, "One more thing." They turned. The 6 men waiting outside in those Cadillacs? By now, my people have surrounded both cars. They're not going anywhere until you get in and drive away. All 8 of you, and you don't come back to Harlem. Ever. The lead hitman's face was white. Genovese won't accept this. Then let him come himself, Bumpy said. Let him walk into Harlem and try what you couldn't. Let him see what happens when you underestimate people who have everything to fight for. He paused. Now get out of this church before I change my mind about keeping it sacred. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Dorothy Henderson started clapping. Slow at first, then faster. 1 person joined her, then 10, then 100. Then all 500 people in Abyssinian Baptist Church were on their feet, applauding, cheering. Bumpy didn't acknowledge it. He sat back down, faced Jocko's casket, bowed his head. Reverend Powell waited for the applause to die down. Then he continued the eulogy, gave Jocko Henderson the service he deserved, talked about his life, his family, his loyalty, his sacrifice for the community. When it ended, Bumpy carried the casket with 5 other pallbearers, walked it out of the church, down the steps, to the waiting hearse. The 2 Genovese Cadillacs were gone. Willie Jackson stood across the street, shotgun visible, nodding. Clean exit, no shots fired, no blood spilled. Bumpy had won without throwing a single punch. The burial was private, just family. Dorothy, the children, a few close friends. Bumpy stood at the graveside in Mount Olivet Cemetery, watching them lower Jocko into the ground. When it was over, Dorothy approached him. Thank you for what you did at the church. Jocko would have done the same for me. What happens now, with the Italians? Bumpy looked out over the cemetery. They'll think twice before coming to Harlem again. Today they learned something. Violence isn't always the answer. Sometimes the strongest weapon is the community standing together. Look, if this story got you hyped, do me a favor, hit that like button real quick. And if you're not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? We're dropping these Bumpy Johnson stories every day, and trust me, the next one is even crazier. Drop a comment and let me know. Could Bumpy have handled this differently? Word of the funeral spread through New York's underworld within hours. Bumpy Johnson had faced down 8 hitmen in a church full of witnesses and walked out without firing a shot. The Genovese family called an emergency meeting. Vito Genovese was furious, but his captains told him the truth. You can't fight 500 people. You can't kill an entire community. 3 weeks later, the Genovese family pulled out of East Harlem completely. The story became legend. Old-timers still tell it. The day Bumpy Johnson turned a funeral into a fortress and proved that real power isn't about guns. It's about respect. It's about community. It's about knowing that when you protect your people, they'll protect you. That's why they called him the Godfather of Harlem.